and visual solutions for your problems. So what that means is, like, let's say you're going, hey, I'm having a lack of engagement with my company. We're trying to build an audience. We're trying to build visibility. We can come in and assess what you're currently doing, figure out why that's not working, discover new opportunities to leverage to build that audience or build that engagement and build that visibility. And then we're actually able to design those solutions for you. So we sort of do it all.
You say we a lot, and you say we like I say we, and it's just me.
I have a team of 4.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah, I have a team of 4. I have a web developer, a photographer, a business strategist, and a copywriter. So
I think that is huge.
So we work together to basically sort of do anything and everything you would need. And then what's really awesome about that is that's just my immediate team. What I also have behind that is what I call like the Hollywood studio model. I know a lot of creatives that can do a lot of stuff that my core team can't do. So if we ever come to a situation where you're like, oh, I want to do this, or what do you think about video media? And I may not have a video media person on my team, but I know a video media person that I already have an established relationship that I can pull in to provide that solution for my client. And they're never going to have any experience other than it all just came from my company. It came from my business. It's not like they're going to get a separate invoice from that video developer. Like, it's all in-house. And so we're sort of, our motto is small agency, big experience, big agency results.
No, it's huge. When I had a partner with Unify MTS, same concept. We were a hub that handled so much on the IT and marketing, but there were just some things that we didn't handle for whatever reason. Maybe we didn't want to, right? Or we weren't the experts in that specific piece. So we had a hub as well to be able to branch off. And our clients loved that because they were able to walk in and we have this whole team behind us sitting at a table, like I'm sure you do. It's a bigger feel, and it makes you feel more important as that client when you really have those experts. Anyone can go in there, right? Like, I have a phone. Does that make me a photographer? No, you know,
right.
So it's nice when you really have that specialization or that target in that piece, Benjie. So now you're here in they're in Findlay. Born, raised there?
Nope, I grew up in BG actually. So I was born in Bluffton, but I grew up in BG. I lived in Findlay until I was about 5. So it's sort of like coming back home, but I've always called BG more home than I have Findlay. But I've been in Findlay off and on for the last 10 years. And we just opened our first like brick and mortar office that we call a S2E7, in April of this year. So like mid-pandemic. I was
right. You made that decision.
Yes, I did. I was like, okay, we don't have anywhere where we can meet clients on the few occasions that we need to. So yeah, let's just like renovate an entire space and spend the money on it on a brick and mortar location in the middle of a pandemic when we have no clients, because it's a perfect time to do it because we don't have any due dates. Like the day everything shut down, pretty much our entire pipeline dried up because a lot of our work was with what we call like service industry. So like restaurants, bars, things like that.
Absolutely.
People that
they
sort
paused.
Yep. People that have like revolving marketing needs and revolving like things, like they always need someone with a creative mind in there to be like, okay, how can we do this? And so those sort of make the best clients. And so obviously the day everything closed, all of that stopped. And so I was like, well, we got free time. Like, now would be a good time. Let's renovate a space and like open a studio. And it's worked out.
It's really nice and charming. I mean, I know that there was a conversation where, I was like, let me have some meetings down in Findlay with my clients as well, because it is extremely charming and very, I don't know, charming is the only word I can think of. Help me out here, Brandi. Give me another word than charming. Quaint. Thank you, Brandi. Quaint. No, it is it's not small by no means. So I love the word that you use, quaint, but it's very intimate.
Yeah, and it's a very comfortable space too. I mean, we've got a sofa and like a little rest area. We've got an entire coffee bar. We can make you a chai latte. We can make you a French press, like whatever you want. So, and
have
then
you
on
fallen
top of that,
asleep there yet?
Have you not napped here yet? No, not napped here yet. It's on the to-do list.
Yeah, napping is the best at the end of the day. Sorry, my lighting is getting a little crazy. Can't mess up the lighting, apparently. Don't have animals. So, Brandi, speaking of moving things around, you've been kind of, as that concierge, you kind of juggle things around with this pandemic as well, right?
Yeah, we have been doing a lot more consulting and just kind of helping companies, think about what they can do in terms of diversity initiatives, but also been working on some policies and things like that for clients. So it has been interesting, to say the least. We're still working as a concierge service for small business, so we can still handle all of those little small tasks or even bigger tasks when it comes to restructuring your company and things like that. So we're still doing that. But I think because of obvious times right now, we've also been doing a lot more in the diversity space.
Well, it's so funny you say that. I recall being diverse as a whole. I recall being diverse. I recall probably about a year ago, Benjie, a year and a half, maybe even now, where you took on a pretty big project that had you leading a whole other brand. So not only were you developing your own brand, and I don't want to say developing, refreshing. There you go. Refreshing your brand at the time, but then you were defining another brand. How's that project going? Are you still in that project?
Yeah, so that is actually one of our largest long-term clients right now. My company acts as the creative director and department for a tech startup in the eye care space. And the telehealth space obviously has been very crazy since the pandemic, but I also think that medicine, specifically eye care, is one of the places, to Brandy's discussion about diversity, is a space that isn't very diverse. A lot of the industry is older white men. Most of the newer part of the industry is younger white men. So it's been a challenge as a gay man, to advocate for, like, we need representation not only in this product and diversity in this product, but we need representation and diversity in this community, and to make space for representation on the platform that's patient facing. Because one of the things we run into is, like, in the age of telehealth, how do you make sure that your doctor is communicating with you the way you like to be communicated? How are you communicating your pronouns? How are you saying, I identify as non-binary, or I identify as female, and, like, these are my pronouns. And so there just wasn't any visibility on any of that sort of representation. And a lot of that had to be sort of built into the solutions that we're building. And a lot of them had to be fought for, which I'm sure Brandy can attest to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's all about educating yourself. So last weekend, I was watching a television show, as I typically do. My wife and I have a ritual, and we're watching it. And they use this term. Now, you, Benji, you may know this term. I'd never heard it before. Two-spirited. So we started chatting about it, and I was trying to figure out what it meant in context. Brandy, have you heard about two-spirited?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Whatever, Brandy. So that is why Brandy is here. You always surround yourself with smarter people. So I'm trying to figure out what the context is, and I think I have a pretty good idea. So I ended up going and researching it. And I'd never heard that terminology before. But I know I've heard that thinking. So I feel like there's so much going on, but there's so much piece that we could just go out and educate ourselves at the end of the day. I'm going through folks' like website and social media, and we're talking about diversity. And I'm like, for example, I had a conversation recently where I said, okay, this is just me going to be blunt and very open and honest. Like, there are no people of color. There are no females here. You have all white men. Who's your audience? Moms. Maybe that's why you're not getting any leads. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a lot of folks, they go in there and they don't look at what other people are looking at. So they want to market to Brandy the way I want to be marketed to. Well, it's kind of like the same thing with, I did not read, I can't say that. I read blurbs of this book or this piece. It was, right. I listened a lot to it, but it was, the the 6 affirmations of love, or the communications, like whether it's touch or like giving or words or
Love
whatever it is.
things like that.
Love languages.
Absolutely.
Love languages.
Love it. Heard it from one of my friends, I think you both know Tricia Nisley with Arbonne. And if you don't know her, ladies and gentlemen, go over and search her out. But amazing woman. But it's so true. You know, my wife, Susan, is different to be talked to than I am, right? She is going to be more of the words and the praise, and I'm a touch. Like, you just got to touch me, you know. Benjie. It's really understanding your client. I don't think people understand who their target audience is. I don't think they even know who their audience are. They just throw it out and hope someone's going to look at it. Like my grandma.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I was just going to add to that. Like, I know a few years ago when I first started my company, we went through design for equity trainings with Creative Reaction Lab, which is huge in the diversity equity space. Founded by Antoinette Carroll. Anyone's not heard of her, go check her out. Check out Creative Reaction Lab. They're really leading the way in terms of diversity and equity training for companies, for institutions, for just about everything. And so one of the very first things we did after I founded the company is me and my team, we went and we did this training that was being hosted by BGSU. And so after everything happened, we doubled down on basically saying, like, we're going to continue this education. We're going to continue these moments of learning, because we as designers are culture makers, and culture and community is a system like all systems. And if the system is designed poorly, and it leaves people out, it deserves to be torn down and redesigned. And so I think that part of that, like you said, communicating to the wrong people and not knowing how to communicate comes from our own inability to recognize the lack of equity in the spaces that we take up. I think it's deeper than simply just not knowing. I think it's an institutional lack of awareness. And I don't like.
You impressed Brandi. Look at Brandi. You said something that just.
Yeah.
And I think that, to your point, it took a white man in a room full of white men pointing out that they had no mothers who were their customers for them to go, oh, yeah, we don't have any mothers who work here. So how can you talk to those mothers? How can you create a space for those people if you're not involving them in the act of making that space?
Agreed. Big picture. And I think, you brought up a great point, and I want to add to this real quick. Summer season is ending here this month. So I'm going to be sad to, I've had some great conversations. Brandi, I think you've opened the light, and I'm going to share something today when we talk about it on how every day I'm thinking of these conversations and so forth. But one of the things, obviously, we changed it up, and our spring season, we were very focused on segment. And this summer, we kind of was a little bit more relaxed. But I'm going to try to find a hybrid for our fall season and combine both of those pieces together. So one of our segments that we'll be doing every day or every week is going to be a Culture in America piece. Now, Brandi, I know you cannot commit every week, but I would love to have you come back on at least once a month and dive into, and maybe it's a whole show on that. Because I think it's still a conversation. And it's not just about being Black when we talk about culture in America. So I think this could be an amazing thing to really continue that focus. We do have a brand new co-host that I would like to introduce. We had her on our show a few weeks back, which is good old Laura Lee. She comes back with an amazing political background, and I think in this time, especially sliding into the fall and the fact that we have politics going to be on every corner, that's going to be a great asset. Another piece or segment with political point that we will have. And then again, our focus, as always, is going to be with our small business. So in saying that, let's get back to two things that I saw this week that I want to dive into. Thing number one, Zoom meetings. People are now having sex on their Zoom meetings.
Oh, that didn't take long.
I was in a BNI group meeting. It was my second visit there. And unfortunately, a woman did not realize that the camera was still on while she was getting out of the shower for her BNI meeting. So everybody got a view, She quickly disconnected, and I don't know. Again, it's my second meeting, so I don't know what that looks like. But what do you guys do for some precautions on the camera, since the camera is always like for me, I typically have myself set up in another room because I have a green screen set up, so I leave my camera running, but it's not in an area that I'm typically here. What are you guys doing for some privacy or security? Brandi, why don't you start that?
I think, you know, I live in a house with a techie, so there's no way, like, you know, some of the things that a lot of people have bought into, we don't buy into. Like, one of the things is Amazon Echo, or we don't buy into that strategy because we know that they're listening, right? So we're just a little bit more precautious, I think, with how our security is handled here at our home. We have a souped up security with our internet and things like that. So I'm married to an IT person, so that kind of, you know, it becomes the way of life. Yeah. I have my computer and everything set in a different area. So, you know, once I disconnect, my camera's off. So when you hang up, it's done. And
you go like I'm like, bye, Brandi.
Honey, but I'm running to the next thing because it's, you know, it's life is so busy. So, but I think that's also a Mac thing. I think most of our computers in general do that now. We'll disconnect when, especially with Zoom, it pops out an alert just saying, hey, you've been disconnected. Yep. Leave your feedback, right? So I don't see how anyone could be getting confused at this point. If they
especially to just walk out of your shower butt naked in front of you, like you had to have connected to that call and then gotten in the shower, gotten back out. Like,
and who has sex on Zoom calls? Like, hold on 1 second, I'm gonna go ahead and pause, and then just like, you know, you've hit the button that says, do you want to connect by your computer audio or your whatnot? Yeah, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
I go the next step. I never enter a room with my audio unmuted or my video turned on. So I always make sure that I'm in the room, I'm adjusted, I am looking presentable. I mean, I'm in my office, so what am I going to do anyway? Maybe sit here without a shirt or a tank top on when it's hot, like on a day I don't want to turn the AC on.
You have the biceps now, though.
I mean,
you got the guns, okay?
So I mean, what, like, I don't really know what I would do, but yeah, I don't go in. It's sort of like you don't walk into the room with your butt first, you know. I don't walk into a virtual room with my camera on and my mic hot. Like, I get myself situated first.
I will set myself up on my meeting, look at myself in my Zoom meeting, and then go to theirs just to make sure that everything is good, the camera's okay.
Yeah. So I think that's a person that they're potentially into voyeurism, and that's a whole different conversation. And there's you know, while it could be fun for some, that's different.
There's a platform for everything. That is what I say. Absolutely. There is a platform for everything.
Absolutely.
And you got to be respectful of what that platform is. You know, if you know that is that. Yeah, I think.
We don't kink shame here, but also please don't have intercourse on your company Zoom meeting.
Know your audience.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think know your audience. Well, here's the big, anyone else have any topics on security before I dive right into some culture in America?
Go ahead.
Here we go. So, Brandi, you got me thinking last week. So, Benjie, if you did not have an opportunity to listen up, or even the audience, if you guys are unaware at this point, we're just catching you brand new today. We always have all kind of conversations. Typically, this summer is obviously dealt with culture in America, race. It doesn't matter the color. It is what it is, right? So one of the things we talked about was Ebonics. And the way there was a comment that was made, let's reverse it. There was a comment that was made that Brandi wasn't black enough because of the way she spoke. Okay, so that brought on conversation on how we've maneuvered that around. So then I tried to think, okay, I started watching some movies. I've been watching ER. I have like 6 episodes left before I finish this season. I'm so excited. So I'm watching, you know, one of my lady friends on there, Angela Bassett. Right, and I'm processing on the movies that she's kind of done between Tina Turner, right? What's Love Got to Do with It? There's a variety, and I've seen her character. So, okay. And then another one that ran across me was Vivica Fox.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I start thinking about some other aspects like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Mm-hmm.
I went and watched Set It Off.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay. I love the movie. So it was definitely one of my favorites. So I've been watching her movies and I see her character, and it is on Empire. If you guys have watched Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, but this is where it changes. So then Susan and I are watching, I don't even know the name of the show. It's a cooking show. It was season 1 and they have celebrities, worst cook in America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Vivica was on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Her character, where I thought was a character, was very similar to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's character, or that Set It Off piece. She spoke, she's such a, I love her. I love when she can put it on and then she draws it back. I got a very sense of who she was, which kept with still the Ebonics, but I still didn't get a uneducated feel. So I asked this question, Brandi, how can you be true to who, not you specifically, a person of color, or even a person, I mean, let's be honest, even as a Muslim person, if they have a heavy accent, there's a judgmental factor going on at the end of the day, right? Anyone that has an accent. How do we deal with that? Like how as a Black person, or we could talk about as a race, how do you stay true to who you are, but yet speak properly?
So this is a very good question. And I actually just had this conversation with my niece. She graduated college this summer and started her first job in corporate America. Her question to me was, how do I adjust? How do I fit in and still be true to myself? Literally, that was the question. And so one of the things that we did speak about was code switching, which is what it's called in the Black community, which is we have a certain dialect that we speak to each other, and then we speak a different dialect perhaps in a professional environment, right? And the only way to do that is, in my personal opinion, is you have got to be secure with who you are and what you are. Because as a Tennessean coming to way up north, when I got here, everybody was talking about how country I was. And I didn't really care. I just thought like, okay, well, this is just what you're going to get. You're going to get a country Black girl coming from the South. You might hear me talk about country cooking, or you might hear me say some things with a slang or a certain dialect that would be unfamiliar or considered unkempt in this part of the country. However, you're going to also get the educated side of Brandi, right? I can have a sentence. I know how to speak proper English, but I also, have a regular accepted terminology that I think that America has, so to speak. Because even if you go to a different country, and let's say we go to Chile, and I've learned how to speak Spanish from my Spanish high school teacher, I can guarantee you it's not going to be the same dialect. I can guarantee you that it's going to sound broken, and they're going to think, oh, she learned this language. The locals will say she learned this language from somewhere else. She definitely is not from around these parts, right? And that's not primarily because of the way I look, but that's primarily because of the way in which I speak. So I think that just the same way in which we have our own dialect here, where we may say, go get them here in our country, but that may be spoken differently in different countries. And I think
absolutely
we have Black Americans we have a culture within a culture. It's a whole different subculture that we have been forced to develop. We had to use certain words to speak in code during slavery. We had to,
sing songs.
They were making songs to talk about freedom.
Chain gang, yeah.
Right, and you got to imagine, you bring all of these people from all of these places, they don't know each other. They're speaking different dialect. And I want to go back to the Geechee people. We spoke about that a few weeks ago, and how the Geechee people have their own dialect that most people have no idea, and for a long part of time was considered to be a abandoned language, primarily because of the way in which it sounds to the trained ear. Like it's not necessarily one that you would consider as a brick and mortar, properly educated voice. However, they have their own dialect, they have their own food, like there's a whole way of life. And I think that as Black Americans, we've had to do that in so many different places in our lives, that it comes natural to many of us, to most of us, because there really is no place for here in this country for us, right? So we've spent our entire lives code switching, you know, speaking one way with your white friends, or speaking a different way, or with your Black friends, and so on and so forth. So I think it's just a matter of the dialect in which we have grown accustomed to being. We've been forced to create a subculture, right? This is not our country, right? So I think you're going to have those people that, you know, will struggle at the beginning. And I talked to my niece about this. It's like, you know, you're going to have a harder time when it goes to when you're going to meetings and you're listening to someone talk, and you want to say, yeah, but something else. Or you want to, when you're typing a professional email, you want to say, you may say WTF.
Yeah.
I'm fitting, or I'm finna. Like that's maybe not something that you would type in a professional email. So there has to come a point in which we have to do both. And I think, you know, often in the Black community, we talk about the Black tax and having to absorb and do more than most folks in order to be seen as equal. Right.
Well, you know, I think, and I don't even think you were here in town. You're talking 15, 18 years ago. Okay. Benji, you're not even going to know this happened. Owens Community College put out this ad of a Black girl who stated that she enjoyed going to Owens because she was going to be a success. Mm-hmm. That commercial got ridiculed, I mean, for years. Another one about ask, and it was axe. And those are the kind of things that I think that we need to accept, right? If we're asking people to be authentic and organic, right, then we've got to be able to not attack. I mean, same thing with you, Benji. And I mean, I'm going to say culture, right? And your culture and your group. I don't even want to label it that aspect, but we will just for these purposes. There's a dialect between gays, right?
Yeah, I mean,
when I say gay, I use the word gays very open and all of the letters and the numbers.
Switch. Yeah, queer people code switched. I actually had a very recent example of me failing to code switch properly, where and it's different. Like, it's not the way that queer people code switch isn't going to be the way that like people of color code switch, right? Like Brandi, it's a code switch that has to do with like culture and something much, much deeper than like the queer experience. But for queer people, it sometimes is simply just like knowing your audience and knowing if it's safe to talk the way you would normally talk with your queer friends, which I'm sure is a shared experience with people of color, right? Is it safe to talk the way I would talk to my Black friends around these white people? Is it safe to talk the way I would talk to my gay friends around these straight people? Mm-hmm. And I had an instance where I thought I was in a safer space than I was, and I slipped into the wrong sort of manner of speaking or way of communicating, and I offended a room full of people. And
were they my age by chance, Benji?
No, actually they were my age, which is why I misjudged the situation. And the unfortunate part about it, and this is the part that can be really difficult, is that language means something different to the people using it than the people who are usually offended by it. And I had to walk this really fine line of being like, I accept that I upset you and that I offended you and I'm sorry, but also saying like, it was an instance of me misjudging my audience and using the wrong language, and not an instance of me being malicious and just not realizing how those words could be offensive to you.
Correct.
And it's really difficult because like you obviously want to take ownership of the fact that like I offended you, I upset you, and I want to take ownership in my part of that because it was my actions that caused it. But I also want you to know that like in proper context, there's nothing wrong with what I said, because you also don't want to like, you don't want to put your community in a position where they can be unfairly criticized for behaving the way that they behave in their safe spaces. And there are people that will take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely.
For sure. I think it goes back to that, now they're little people, right? But I think back when I was younger, it was midget, right? Or little person. And now the correct term is little people. Back in my day, and Brandi, correct me, it might be location wise, but queer was not a word. That wasn't, it was, it was gay, right? Queer was a negative word. And now I think it's an empowering word and people utilize it. It's an educated word.
We've reclaimed
right?
it.
Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not queer, but I mean, I think that I know that was a colloquialism that had a lot of dirt wrapped in it. I don't want to say dirt because I don't think it's a bad word. I think that
the perception.
It was not seen as a good word to a lot of gays, right? And I know, for instance, we talk about Audre Lorde. We can talk about some of the greatest writers of all time who were queer living people, right? And that's the terminology in which was assigned to them. And so that became a nasty word or a dirty word to a lot of folks. And I think that the queer community or the gay community have reclaimed that word the same way the Black Americans have reclaimed the N-word and how it belongs to us. There is also, and even in that particular instance, you can be in a group of folks and you can say something with Black people. One Black person may hear the N-word and it's not a big deal, right? And then you have another set of Black folks that may hear that word and it's completely triggering. So, it really just depends on the audience. That's one of the things that I've been having to talk with my son about is if you hear the N-word, what do you do? What do you really do? Because I grew up in a time, my father fought, physically marched and went to jail during the civil rights movement and marched with Dr. King. Grew up in Memphis. We had family members that were, during the bus riots and things like that, and the strikes and things like that, were injured and things like that. So I come up in a time where I knew what that word meant, but I also come up in a time that we kind of use that word and celebrated that word to some degree. So that word doesn't have as much sting to me. So that would not be a proper, that wouldn't be a proper word to use with me if you were trying to upset me. That word would not upset me because I own the word. We've reclaimed the word. It's something different for me, right? And so trying to educate my mixed race son that if he hears that word, how does that trigger you? I want to raise him in a way in which that word doesn't offend him because we know what we are, right? So, and I'm sure that with the gay community, you have probably had to do some of the same reclaiming and kind of distinguishing what the word means to you.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of contention, and I imagine like internally, like where you just said, the N-word doesn't faze you. I remember trying to get a queer art magazine off the ground, and I was met with extreme resistance from an older community that was like, well, why would you call it queer? And I'm like, because that's our power, right? Like, it's not like I'm out here saying F art magazine, you know what I mean? Because I mean, I think that's still the word that's probably most like the N-word in terms of we can say it, but you can't say it. And like there was a lot of people, why would you use the word queer? Why do you use that word? And I'm like, there's multiple reasons. One, it doesn't hold the power it used to. And two, it's more inclusive to me and to my experience than an acronym that's built on this idea of diversity and inclusion, but requires you add a new letter every time we include someone new. I'm like, that's checkbox diversity, and I don't with that. Like, I like diversity as like an actual practice and not, well, we checked the box. So I don't like that acronym. I find that acronym to be like so just saltine cracker bland. Like, it's so non-inclusive. It's so unrepresentative of who we are as a community that queer is just a better word. It's a bigger, friendlier, happier umbrella that includes everybody, even people that there isn't necessarily a letter to include on an acronym for.
I'm going to be honest on that situation. I feel shameful that I don't know the whole aspect, right? I know like 5 letters and then it ends with 2 from the 2 spirit, as I learned. Okay. But I feel guilty, but I think that if you used one word, that would, again, hit what you want. Because at that point, you're still leaving somebody out. And when I forget a letter, right, I feel guilty. Speaking of feeling guilty, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, in a lot of places, they would like get around that, like forgetting a letter by just adding the plus on the end. And it's like, but if I'm really just an afterthought, am I really included? Like,
right?
There's that implication there, you know?
I think we're misjudging as well the power in just simply having a conversation with people as well. I mean, how do you want to be referred to? Do I want to be called the N-word at the grocery store by an older white lady? Probably not. But I mean, for me, it would cause me to laugh. I would think it was funny, and not for the reasons in which some people might, but it's not, it doesn't offend me, right? So that word doesn't have the stain, so I don't give you the power to use that word against me to offend me, right? So that would be my mind frame. But I mean, I have found that when I am in company with anyone that is on the spectrum, I specifically ask, how do you like to be spoken to? What are your pronouns?
Yeah.
What do you
consider yourself?
Right, exactly. And that's so much easier. And it's the same way with when you go to talk about things or topics that affect Black people. I think we have gotten so accustomed to assigning shame to people that are different from us that we automatically feel, like you mentioned, I feel guilty for not saying the right terminology for these people. I feel bad. We shouldn't feel that way. We should get back to just speaking with each other and asking what you want to be called, because I believe that spectrum, it goes back to the Black African-American conversation. There are a lot of folks that would prefer to be called African-American. I don't like it. I want to be called Black, and that just is what it is, right? But no one's a monolith. We're all different. So we just have to just ask.
I had something really wise to add, and I totally forgot. So I'm trying to spin it in my head. It was really intelligent, and I totally forgot it. Brandi, do you find yourself fighting against that's what it was, your own community as women? And that can be twofold. I find that a lot of women are, oh, bitch this and bitch that, and just, it makes me mad when people are tearing themselves down for no reason, right? But do you find yourself even more, I don't want to say attacked, but not Black enough, we'll add to that, because of the white husband? Like, is that an issue in your culture, or in your, obviously not in your circle because you get to pick and choose, right? But is that a look that, you can't find a Black man and you're taking, I mean, like, do the white people mad at you because you have a white guy? And I can't imagine that kind of ignorance.
Well, imagine it. I think typically white people don't say anything. I just tend to think they don't say anything, but they will stare. They will stare.
I've seen it.
The paint off of my skin, any makeup I have will come off, because that will just be the, we'll get everyone's eyes. I remember our second date, we went to a restaurant, and we're in the South. We grew up in the South. So we walk into this restaurant, and the entire night, everybody's eyes are on us. It was the worst date. Like, with the first date was terrible. This second date was even worse, with everybody just staring at us, you know. And at that time, I wasn't as secure with dating someone outside of my race, so it became much more apparent to me, and I felt much more uncomfortable, right? I think with women in general, I don't usually get a lot of hate from women in terms of, why didn't you date or marry a Black man? I did have a really good customer. When I was in college, I worked for AT&T, and he bought so much stuff from me, and he got very upset when my husband came and he brought me something for lunch, and he said, "Wait a minute, are you with him? Like, do you know this guy?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that's my husband." And he was like, "Oh, Black guy, I'll never buy another thing from you." He said, "You have completely let our entire race down, that you would go this far outside of your race. All of these beautiful Black men around here, and you choose this." And I said, "Oh, okay." I mean, that's his right, and he was totally, I'm okay with that. But that was probably the most jarring to this day. Now, people usually, I believe, have a lot of questions. Most of the time, I get a lot of questions from folks. They want to know the difference between Black men, white men, or they want to know, you know, what the difference is with the families and things like that, and a lot of stuff that doesn't mean anything. So, but yeah, I don't usually get a lot of stuff from women that's negative. More than anything, I get a lot of women that ask me, like, does he have a brother, or, you know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things that really has opened my eyes in this whole situation, and even doing these on a weekly basis, is how we use pronouns, right? So typically what I'm hearing is when people are describing situations or people, it's, yeah, you know, the gay guy Benjie. It's not Benjie the artist, right? It's not Benjie with the hair. It's the gay guy Benjie, or the Black folks that I saw at the restaurant. Like, why do they have to be Black? Like, there's nothing in the story that you need to use their gender, or maybe not their gender, but their race or whatnot. But yet people will still profile that way. Do you find that, or is that just something that I'm just noticing because I'm noticing versus just watching?
I think there's such a big them versus us situation that happens in our country that's just the way it's set up. And I'm guilty of it. I'll be honest. And I might assign, oh yeah, it was a white guy that did XYZ. Totally guilty of that, right? And that's largely because in my mind, I am on hyper alert all the time because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if someone's going to say I stole something. And this is not a woe is me kind of thing. It's like literal.
This is truth. Yeah, this is real. This is real.
So I feel like we're on such high alert all the time. I have been, my dad used to say, pick identifiers. Wherever you are, pick identifiers. If I'm somewhere and I don't know where I am, is there a train? Find your way around. And so I think that I just do it sometime as an identifier, just because I'm already hyper vigilant on picking identifiers with people. If I'm somewhere, I may say, oh my gosh, there was a white guy with a big beard and he had glasses that went past me. So I'm watching every detail with you. And
I get it. People used to describe me as the big guy. You know, Brian, the bigger guy. That's how people describe me all the time. And now it's Brian, you know, the beard guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, we become that. Who are you, Benjie? Are you the buff guy?
I don't know. I don't know, because I think, like, to Brandy's point, I think a lot of it is the identity politics of the era that we live in.
Yeah.
And but I also think it's deeper than that in, like, terms of, like, humans, like, we're monkeys, right? Like, we're just upright monkeys on two legs. And, like, part of what our brain does that has allowed us to survive is we codify things, right? We say, this is a chair, this is a banana, this is a fruit, that's a Black lady, that's a gay man, that's a white guy. We codify our experience because it's how our brain, which is programmed for survival, goes, that's safe, that's a threat, that's okay, we should be cautious about. And I think it really goes back to that.
Yeah.
And so I don't ever really find offense to it, because if that is the thing that is most obvious about me that you remember is Benjie's the gay one, or Brandi's the black lady, or Brian's the big guy, or Brian's the guy with the beard, I just don't put a lot of stock in it, right? Because I don't think it matters that much. And I think it has more to do with the way our brain codifies our experiences than it does our ingrained prejudices.
Say that again. That's a powerful statement. Say that again.
I think it's the way our brain codifies our experiences and not about our ingrained prejudices. I think ingrained prejudice is saying things like black folks or colored people. That's a prejudice.
Woo, the colored.
You know? Yeah, like, oh, the colored lady. Okay, no, that's a prejudice. That's not you codifying her identity to better understand or to better like remember the experience. That's you literally applying a known derogatory mark against who she is as a person.
Hey,
just
you know
like
what, Benjie,
if someone
can I add to that real quick? Here is a memory that I will always remember. And then we got to cut this in because we can talk about this for hours. We always get in trouble, Brandi. We get on topic and we just go. But I want you to finish your statement, Benjie. Back in the 80s, I remember my grandmother, who was a humongous racist individual. You know, my family would go, my cousin, who I have 4 cousins that are black. One is light-skinned black, one is very black, one is all white. You wouldn't even know she was black. So I mean, it's ridiculous. My grandfather and my uncles would go coon hunting and tell my cousin that they were chasing him. I mean, it's disgusting. With that being said, I am not, by no means do I even believe that it's a generation I'm giving her a pass, because no pass is forgiven, but she's dead. Can't do anything now. Right. But my grandmother would, this was her way. She was always a those colored people. And I would ask her when I got older, I said, Nana, what color are they? And she just looked at me. But I would never forget this. I have this memory in my head that is just cemented. Again, Benjie, you may have read about it, but you weren't here. It was when Vanessa Williams won Miss USA.
The 92, something like that.
And my grandmother, I remember my grandmother going, you know, she's pretty for a colored girl. Right. And I remember me being young thinking, that's not a right comment. Like, I didn't know why I didn't agree with that. But I remember thinking at that very moment, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps. Like, I remember this like yesterday. And this was in the 80s. So I couldn't have been no older than 7, 8, give or take. And I never, and she was getting a compliment. She was being nice. You know,
it's a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
It's not a compliment at all.
You're saying, because really what she's saying is, for someone who I fundamentally don't believe can be as pretty as a white girl, she's pretty.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and
no, Benjie, I want you to wrap it up because I'm assuming Brandi's alarm meant she has another meeting.
She has got to go. Yeah, and I was just going to wrap that up by saying, like, so do I put a lot of stock in it? No, but do I also make a conscious effort to not point out those things that can be used to sort of be a prejudice? I don't try to use things that I know are also actively used as a prejudice to identify people. So if someone was like, hey, did you see that guy that went by? And I would be like, oh, the really tall guy with the dark hair, you know, like, or, oh, you mean the really skinny guy who was wearing like the crop top and it was pink? Like, I'm not going to say, oh, the gay guy, oh, the black guy, like, because it doesn't matter. It's unimportant, but that's just my personal preference, my way of hoping that I can slowly shift the language and the way that we experience and codify our world, because the reality is, that codification is a system built over many, 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 many years of our monkey brains doing what they do best. And there's nothing saying that we can't rebuild that system.
I agree.
There's nothing saying we can't change the way we codify what we see or what we experience.
So last question, and I want to talk, okay, we don't have time. I can't ask the question. Next conversation, I want to talk about our possible prospect vice president, because I'm really irritated that they're already starting to make her the first black here, the first there. Let's just talk about her doing the job that she's doing. So all of her credentials are going to be passed over because she's the first black or the first Asian or whatever it looks like. And now it's her parents weren't even born yet. I can't even go on. That's a whole other conversation. Let's just talk about her skill level. That's all I want to talk about. In my mind,
we should talk about that though. We should talk about that because there is a lot of. Okay, go
There's
ahead.
a lot to unpack.
We're not going to talk today, but that's
there.
a subject that I do want to talk about. I also think that they are setting her up for the next 12 years. They are setting her up to run for president after Biden. And they are already, he's made several comments that I believe that is what this plan is. So we're going to talk about that. But with that being said,
I would much rather have Michelle Obama as female first president, first black woman president, more than Kamala.
She could completely surprise us in the next 30, 60, 90 days. And then she has 4 years because she's going to be running the White House. Let's be open and honest.
Yeah.
She's going to be the face.
Given her record, I hope so.
Yeah. I hope she does. I'm a Kamala fan. So from the very beginning, she was my candidate. Then I switched to Klobuchar, and nobody wants to talk about that. But I thought Klobuchar was. I'll leave this alone because I feel like that would be much more polarizing. But
let's have a deep conversation about that next one. Maybe I'll have to look at a political person as well to bring in, maybe Abby. But anyway, I want to kind of wrap up this. We appreciate your guys' time and energy. So let's talk about what we have going on the rest of this week. We are middle of August, so summer is pretty much done. Brandi, are you doing anything for the fall, work-wise? Any specials? Anything that people maybe need some best bets because they're kind of getting ready to get into that ending third quarter, getting into fourth?
Yeah, so right now we're still through this quarantine. We're running certain specials for small business, just depending on what the need is. So the
best place to reach out to you would be?
Would be to go to the paxratconcierge.com or go to brandysurratt.com. Or our number is 419-664-0500.
Perfect. And that's Brandi, B-R-A-N-D-I, Surratt, SURRATT.com. I'll also put it up there, or maybe it'll be down there. I don't know where it ends up. But it'll be in the link as well. Benjie, what about you, my friend? What do you have time to take on a new client?
Yeah, we always love to sit down and talk. Our favorite and first thing is we just want to sit and talk about your business, what it is, what you do, why you like it, why you started it, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. We want to know, and we want to help you figure out who you are, what you do, and why it matters.
Awesome.
So if you want to have that conversation,
you're good with clients nationwide. You can go to Florida, You can go to Washington.
I actually have clients currently in Canada and the UK, so we're international.
Oh, you are international. Don't you think you are that? Look at that. Pinkies up. Couldn't get it up for a minute. Well, awesome. I appreciate your time and energy today, Benjie. What's a great way for someone to reach out to you?
You can go to our website at singularitydesign.co. No M on the end because you won't find us. And from there, you'll find all of our contact information. And if you want, stop by the studio, wear a mask. We'll make a cup of coffee. We can chat. We've had people stop in before and just be like, so what do you guys do here? What's going on? I saw your website and it said just drop by. And we're like, welcome, let's chat. So
awesome. Perfect. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your time, as I said, and energy. We look forward to further conversations. We also thank our sponsors, which is Remax with Justin Anus. We also have Elite Bookkeeping Plus with Tony Wood, no S. I always want to put an S on her name, but she is singular, Tony Wood. So we appreciate you guys. And with that being said, we will look forward to seeing you next week. Be safe and take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.